What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston here at Barclays Center, where the Celtics are finally over 500 after a 113-99 win over the Brooklyn Nets, which felt like a pretty close game and was a pretty close game for most of this one. But ultimately, they pull away with a big fourth quarter, outscored the Nets by 10 in the final period, and really just clamped defensively in the second half. And that was kind of the key to this one after one of the sloppiest starts to the year and the kind of start that I think against most teams you would not be able to overcome. So they do come away with the win. Lots of turnovers on this one. That was kind of the story of, in particular, the first half. And Jaylen Brown was responsible for 8 of them. They finished with 19, almost double their season average. Rare game where the opposing team actually racked up more steals than they did. So an uncharacteristic Celtics game as far as this season goes. But the hot shooting has continued. That's been obviously critical. And most importantly, a team that started 0-3 and at one point looked like they were heading towards a pretty dark potential season here, or at least by some projections, I always felt like they were pretty fine based on the on-court product. They're now 8-7 and have made some tremendous strides. 3-game win streak here. And they have an opportunity to improve to 9-7 because they have a couple of days off again and they host the Brooklyn Nets at TD Garden on Friday. So a lot to talk about in this one. It wasn't the most exciting game, but still a lot to point out. I think the first thing I wanted to start with is that there is a level of buy-in right now that is very evident from player 1 through 15. And I know for the most part, when I've done this post-game recap, I've focused on individual player performances and kind of monitoring where's Payton Pritchard at, where's Derrick White at, and talk a little bit about those today. But what I really wanted to start with is the fact that Jaylen Brown only played 10 minutes in the first half of this game. And I was watching him on the bench and I was trying to figure out like what exactly that's about. And he does seem to be a little bit under the weather. He has for a little over a week now, just based off of him like being sniffling and kind of sneezy at the post-game press conferences. But I think in this case, he said it himself in his presser. He just said, I've been playing like shit tonight. I was playing like shit in the first half. And he was sloppy with the ball. He was trying to kind of make the right play, but he was overthinking it a little bit. But Joe pulled the plug on him, and instead he played Anthony Simons for 19 minutes in the first half, a guy who has had the plug pulled on him quite a bit this season as well. And obviously Jaylen plays a ton in the second half. He ends up finishing this game with 32 minutes, played 22 out of 24 minutes in the second half. But when he wasn't playing well, Joe had no problem putting him on the bench. And that has kind of been the story of this team so far. I would say, you start with Jordan Walsh tonight for the third consecutive game, but he finishes with only 11 minutes. Sam Hauser, who played 7 minutes against the Clippers and really didn't do anything there, he plays 22 minutes in this one and was a team high plus 22 and was really, really critical to actually securing the victory ultimately. So it just kind of continues to be the story of this team that every time as media members we kind of get comfortable with like, okay, this is the rotation or these are the guys that are playing, we then see in a snap of a finger everything changes. And you can look at that, we've debated it quite a bit on the post-game show, but you can look at that as a strength or a weakness. You can look at that as something that young guys are now going to potentially mentally struggle with the reality that like their minutes are inconsistent. But to me, it shows the fact that nobody has shown an inkling of resentment or complaining or anything like that. And guys, for the most part, have been ready to go when their number has been called. It shows that they're bought into what Joe is preaching. And I asked Sam Hauser post game, in particular, about like, has it been hard for you? Because he's a guy that came into the season as one of the vets, as one of the guys that was proven and is on a 4-year, contract and is somebody that is not like a flyer, a developmental guy that has never really played before. And he said, yeah, of course it's been hard. But at the same time, like it has to be about the team and not yourself. And you have this great mantra. Here's the full clip there. How do you handle that? And is it something that you guys kind of all understand is just the plan for this year and just kind of roll with the punches?
Yeah, of course it's hard. But you kind of just have to, like you said, roll with the punches and take advantage of the time you are out there and still try to help the team win and try to be external and don't be internal. It's hard in the moment.
What do you mean by that?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Like, don't think about yourself. Think about the team first. If you're thinking about yourself, then your head's not in the right place. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of that this year. I feel like just changing lineups, rotations, just trying to figure out what works. And the other game, a different lineup was working, so you roll with that, and that's cool. You just have to trust it. And then like tonight, we played a whole different lineup. for a good chunk of that third quarter that maybe hasn't played together a lot, and it worked. So he just rolled with it. So yeah, just making the most of the time you're out there.
Is that like a mantra you guys have, or just go with that?
I mean, he's kind of preached it like everybody's going to play this year.
So I think, to me, that's the biggest thing, because we didn't know what this year was going to look like. We didn't know whether the pieces were going to come together. And again, a lot of the pieces we didn't even know how they were going to perform, right? Guys like Luka Garza and Josh Minot and Jordan Walsh, and the list goes on and on of guys that have just not really played NBA minutes. And I still don't have the answers on those guys. We're 15 games in, and each of them have had good moments and bad moments. But what I do feel pretty good about is that everybody's kind of bought it into what Joe and the coaching staff is selling. And that's going to pay dividends in the long run, so long as he can hold that and kind of continue to maintain that. And I think it starts with somebody like Jalen, who has obviously a finals MVP, multiple time All-Star, is the supermax guy on the team. And if he gives you attitude for benching him in the first half, or afterwards seems to be unhappy about it, which Jalen kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve, I think we would have seen it, then that trickles down to now, is Sam unhappy with the 7 minutes that he played against the Clippers? Is Jordan, all upset because he thought that he had the starting spot, and now here he is again, kind of not really getting second half opportunities after playing some really good defense for like 5 consecutive games, right? So that's the biggest thing that I've learned about this team so far. Joe Mazzulla said that it's the care factor, it's that they care. And I think in that same vein, it's that they're bought in to this whole system about it being about the team and bigger than you, and guys are going to be in and out of the rotation. And for some guys, it's like, if you're Jordan, you really can't be too upset. Like 2 weeks ago, you weren't even playing. But I think for other guys, it's hard. Like Sam Hauser, I don't think expected to be playing 7 minutes in a game when you thought about what this roster looked like entering the year. I mean, people were talking starter minutes. Is he going to make a leap and score a whole bunch more? And I think the system has been a little challenging for him. But at the same time, you saw tonight, full court pressure. Like he's able to do quite a bit on the defensive end that I don't think people really expect from him. So that's number one for me. Number two is, I'll just mention by name, Payton Pritchard, who had such a difficult start to the year shooting, was 17% from three in October. And that was kind of the story of like, can Payton Pritchard just not be a starter? Like, is that what this is about? Which never really made any sense when you think about it. Like, why would a guy struggling from three have anything to do with them being a starter? He was getting clean looks. But now for 3 consecutive games, he kind of hit rock bottom, I would say, when he had those back-to-back 5-point games. And then he comes back to Boston after the road trip. That was a second Orlando game and the Philadelphia game. And he comes back to Boston, gets a haircut, tells us the haircut kind of rejuvenated him, and has a great game against the Memphis Grizzlies in a blowout, follows that up with another great game against the Clippers, and has another great game tonight where he hit 5 of his first 7 threes. He finished 5 of 12 from 3, but it was kind of all they needed, because in the first half, they were really struggling. They were not taking good care of the ball, and Pritchard had 17 points, I believe, in the first half. So he really kept them in it. But you look at his stat line tonight, 22 points, 10 rebounds, which was a team high, 5 assists. Like, he just finds ways to impact the game. And it's something that Joe Mazzulla has talked about quite a bit, is that people will always look at Payton for scoring, but in reality, he's doing so much more. And I think you look at 10 rebounds, like this is not the first time this season that he's led the team in rebounds. And it's a credit to how he kind of impacts the game in all different ways. And I think the rebounding is a true strength of his game. These aren't rebounds that are just falling in his hands. Like, he is fighting for those boards, particularly in the offensive end, which he had 2 on the offensive end tonight. And so to me, if you had questions around like, can Payton Pritchard be a starting point guard in this league? Like, I really do think that he's answered those questions this season. It's not to say like he's the greatest starting point guard in the NBA, or, his future is completely certain. I know exactly what he's capable of. I don't. This is still a big leap of responsibilities from what he had last year. And we're still just 15 games in. And the Brooklyn Nets and the Memphis Grizzlies are not, and the Clippers are not the best teams in the league. And he's going to face far better teams and far better defenses. But at the same time, now that the 3-point shot is beginning to fall at like a normal clip, you're seeing the kinds of numbers that he's putting up. You're seeing the kind of impact that he's having on his teammates. And I think that's only going to continue. So again, wasn't like he was on fire all game. Like, he actually went a little cold in the second half, but he did enough tonight. Those first half points were really important because they were down by as many as 10, and it could have gotten ugly. And you never want to fall behind by more than that, even if it's against a team that has not been winning a lot of basketball games. Like, anybody can get hot in the NBA. That's kind of the whole point, right? A lot of talented players. So important first half stint for him, and on a night where a lot of guys struggled. And these guys have been talking about kind of in the same breath all season long, but Derrick White, again, not the most efficient shooting game, 6 of 15 from the field, 3 of 10 from 3, but he's moving like himself again. And I thought that for a couple of weeks there, he had his head down, he was a little bit slower almost, like he was just in a funk. And this team, he has been the heartbeat of this team for a couple of years now. We've said it before, but when Derrick White has missed games in the past few years, even when it was the super team Celtics, like this team has really, really missed him, and it's been evident. And tonight, when he picked up a few early fouls, it was like they needed him. They needed him defensively. And I thought in the second half, he brought a level of energy that was contagious. He made big plays. When he makes a mistake, he is the king of immediately fixing that mistake. He turned the ball over once and then immediately drew a charge on the next possession. And it's like that's just the nature of how he plays. Another typical two steals, two block night for him, and hit some big shots in the fourth quarter. So with him, again, another player, I'm less concerned about his stat line, and it's more about how is he impacting winning, and does he look like he's having fun? Because he really didn't look like he was having fun there for a second. And we all know about last year, he went through a rut where he kind of lost his joy a little bit and obviously came back and returned to his old self. But you can see it in the way that his body language is on the bench, how he reacts to his own mistakes, the way he's joking around with Jason Tatum. Like he just has his spunk back. And that's going to obviously be very important for a Celtics team that came into the season incredibly reliant on him for everything, right? For playmaking, for scoring, for defense, and is going to, he's going to continue to be one of those guys. And right now, I think it's been good to see him kind of regain his mojo a little bit. So Payton and Derrick, I think they struggled kind of hand in hand, and now they're both kind of finding their way hand in hand. And that's your starting backcourt. I would imagine it's going to be your starting backcourt all season long. We'll see, maybe Anthony Simons gets a crack at it at a certain point, but for right now, it's been really good to see those two kind of start to find their way a little bit. And I think it's going to continue. Like, I think the 3-point slump that they started the year on was almost unimaginable, just how ice cold they both got. And it was never going to be, I mean, Joe said it last game, but it was inevitable that they were going to find their way. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this basketball season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. There are some players that have been going absolutely crazy. You look at a Luka Doncic, you look at a Steph Curry, who has just been playing out of his mind, Kevin Durant, Austin Reeves, all these guys, you can pick more on them. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Play PrizePicks to get action on basketball in more than 40-plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. On PrizePicks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payout, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. And the last thing I wanted to say, I know I started with him a little bit because we were talking about the fluctuating minutes and the way that there was guys kind of in and out of the lineup and what has that meant for the buy-in and all of that. But I think Sam Hauser deserves to be his own bullet point in the positive takeaways from this game, because Sam Hauser at times this season has looked a little bit lost. He has been in an abysmal shooting slump. Entering tonight, he was shooting 20% from 3 in November. And Sam is one of those guys where, like, he is the epitome of a shooter that has a stretch, but he's going to come back to baseline. And this is probably the stat that I've repeated more than any stat relating to the Celtics, but Hauser has never shot below 40% in any season in his entire career, high school, college, NBA, G League. Like, he's just never done it. So when he starts a year cold, and he didn't actually start this year cold, he started with a good rhythm, but he went cold for a couple weeks here. He's going to find his way. The thing that I'll say about him tonight, he was 2 of 5 from 3, but I think he started 0-3 or 0-2. I think started with 3. But the first couple looks that he got were not good looks. And what I mean by that, like, they might look like wide open, and the NBA shot tracking will probably say that they were wide open threes. But I know from watching him basketball, from playing basketball, that he was not in flow. Like, he was not shooting a rhythm shot. And maybe when you're already feeling it, that's a good shot. But right now, Sam needs to get going. Like, he has not been getting enough shots. He's not been getting enough clean looks. And the first couple ones that he had tonight were a little bit like somebody got caught up and shot clock's winding down and they find Sam and Sam kind of has to shoot it, or that sort of thing. And then he had a couple of great hustle plays. I think the play that I actually felt like turned the game in the moment, and then a couple of people pointed out to it afterwards, but he got a steal at half court that was kind of this weird loose ball that he probably had a disadvantage athletically to actually go secure that loose ball, but he secures it. It ends up, I think it resulted in the 3-point shot, but it was just like a couple of sequences of hard playing basketball that the basketball gods rewarded, and he ended up getting a couple of clean looks, hits 2 threes in this game, which will hopefully kind of translate to the future. But I think the reality is we've been talking a lot about Jordan Walsh as a defensive stopper and Josh Minot as a solution to the rebounding woes, and Ugo and the flashes, the defensive instincts, as Joe's called it, that he's shown at just 19 years old. And there's just so much to like in that young trio of athletic, like high-flying, defensive-oriented players. That it at times has felt like Sam is just kind of an afterthought, and especially right now that this team's identity is like playing this like scrambling, hectic defense. What's Sam's role there? And tonight you saw, first of all, he was pressuring the ball full court, which he kind of said, it's not something that he's done a lot of. And at the same time, you saw that he can play that style. Maybe it doesn't come as naturally for him as it comes for Jordan, but he can do it, and he can defend a lot better than people expect. And he was in that closing lineup not because Joe felt bad for the previous game, but because that was their best chance at winning. So they're going to need him. Like at the end of the day, he's one of the best shooters in the world. Like that's why he got paid. That's why he is on this team. But he's not just a guy that can shoot. And I know that's like, I don't want to just say like the Joe lines, but it's true. Like for watching him the last few years here, he just makes winning plays. Like he plays good defense. I like that he did a little dribble jumper that was a 2-pointer to start the game, because that's the kind of thing that's going to get you going as well. He has a lot of these tip out rebounds, especially on the offensive end, that just don't show up on the box score, because that's not who gets the board recorded on the box score. It's whoever secures the rebound. I think the tipper outer should be the one to get the credit, honestly. But I asked him about that, and it's like he was basically like, I'm not athletic enough sometimes to get it, so I'll just tip it out to a teammate. So he just does little things that contribute to winning, and ultimately, yes, it's the threes that are the biggest thing. And even when he's not shooting them at the gravity that he has, it's different than these other young guys that can defend. And it's not going to be the same Hauser game every single night, but I thought tonight it certainly was. That's going to be what I write about for my post-game story, or I've already written about by the time you're watching this. And I just thought that he made a lot of good things happen in this game. And it's just good to see a guy be resilient even when the playing time is up and down. So a lot to like. Again, not a good game overall. Like I did not think this was the best Celtics basketball that they've played, but these are the kinds of games that you cannot lose. Like you have to beat the Brooklyn Nets that are 2-12 if you want to be a good team. And again, I know some of the fans are like, that's not what we want, but the players and the coaches, they want to be a good team. They want to see this team make the playoffs. This Eastern Conference is wide open. Everybody knows it. And now they're 8-7 after starting 0-3, and by all the advanced analytics, this is a playoff team, right? They are like top 9 in offense and defense and net rating entering tonight. And this night, the 14-point win probably helps, despite the fact that this did not feel like a 14-point game for the most part. But like this is kind of where they're at right now. You're starting to see some of the pieces come together, and you're starting to see the shooting come together, which is really the biggest thing. They were the worst 3-point shooting team at a moment there, and that was never going to hold because there are too many talented shooters on this roster. I think this is the 3rd consecutive game that they've shot 40% or more from 3. The 3-point shooting is what kept them in it when they otherwise were not doing the things that have made them a 500 team so far. 500 team, I mean that in a positive way. Like they were not winning the margins. They were making kind of these careless errors, but they were hitting their threes. So it was kind of reverse of what we've seen for a lot of the season. And one last note that I'll mention is that the first couple of games of the season was all about the rebounding woes because they were getting so out-rebounded. The Pistons game was a disaster on the glass. The Knicks game was a disaster on the glass. And we knew it was a roster construction issue. I mean, we knew from the offseason rebounding was going to be a challenge. I kept thinking to myself, like, oh, God, all year I'm going to be writing about rebounding and asking about rebounding, and it's going to get so boring, and it's going to be so helpless to watch these guys try to get boards and not be able to secure them. I don't want to say the rebounding thing is a done deal. Like, it's going to continue to be something they have to focus on, and they've lost 2 games off of missed box outs, right? One against the Jazz and one against the 76ers. So it has been an issue, but it is not dominating the season the way I expected it to. They're a kind of middle of the pack rebounding team now, which is huge progress from the first couple weeks here. So just another note there that they out-rebounded the Nets. Again, not one of the more formidable rebounding teams in the league, but certainly something that you want to continue to see if you are a Celtics team that is trying to win basketball games. You don't want to lose games because you can't close defensive possessions with the defensive rebound. So that's it for now. A lot to like. As always, let me know what you thought about this game in the comment section. Let me know what stood out to you. Did I miss any positive takeaways? Or as always, you can always put your negative takeaways as well. I always see those. So feel free to put that in the comment section. Celtics win 113-99. I'm headed back home to Boston later tonight. Celtics have a couple of days off from gameplay. We will have a practice in there. And then Friday, they host these very same Brooklyn Nets at TD Garden. And we'll have more coverage from the Garden coming then.